So in this clip, I'd like to talk a little bit about emotional threat. I mentioned it in the main training workshop. So what is the big deal with emotional threat, and why would our limbic system be keeping such a close eye on it? Why are we so easily emotionally unsettled? And to answer that question, we will need to go back into the natural world, and groupings of animals, especially animals that live in community groups, and especially when those community groups belong to higher primates, right back into the world of the chimp. So if we think about what we know about social groupings in animals, one of the things that we might very well notice is that there is security in numbers. Being part of a group bestows upon an individual a certain degree of safety and security, and it also allows for a sharing of resources and sharing of protective duty as well. Many eyes can keep an eye out for a threat in a way that just one individual on its own can't. And this is of crucial importance when we are thinking about ourselves as viewed through the lens of the limbic system and whether or not there is anything to be concerned about. Obviously, it is scanning the environment for physical threat. But as we mentioned, it's also scanning the environment for emotional, psychological threat. So what's that about? Well, specifically when we're talking about groups of higher primates, and especially in groups of chimpanzees, what we can begin to see is the answer to that question. Any time at all spent speaking to or listening to researchers or experts talking about the world of a chimpanzee, we automatically notice how complex it is and how intertwined the relationships of each and every member of that group is, and that those relational dynamics are crucial to the success or not so much success of each of the individuals. Because in the world of a chimpanzee troop, hierarchy is everything. And so that is what the limbic system is wired to be particularly interested in. And the rule here is very, very simple. The higher up the hierarchical ladder you are, the more power you have, the more choice you have, the more resources you're going to have, the better options you're going to get, whether it's from a food perspective or a mate perspective, or indeed whereabouts you are, should there be a threat to the group as a whole. So power equals security, and security is directly linked to how powerful you are. The more powerful you are, the higher your levels of security. The better your relational dynamics with other members of the troop, the less likely it is that you yourself are going to be attacked out of the blue because you're one of the lower ranking individuals within the group. There's less of a likelihood you're going to go hungry or have resources taken away from you by other members of the group. So the basic bottom line here is hierarchy matters, and place in hierarchy matters very, very much to individuals. And that's what the limbic system is paying attention to. That's why it cares what's going on around it, and why, if it thinks it sees a threat from other members of its troop, it is likely to view that as threatening. Now, here in our modern world, those threats are less likely to be about access to resources, although they do still play a part. Only here, power is replaced with, or perhaps akin to, financial resources. The more powerful we are, chances are the more money we have, and therefore the more resource we can have. So there is, to a degree, a direct correlation there. But it's about other things too. It's about that connectivity and positioning within the societal group, within the troop. And that troop might be a family, it might be our team at work, it might be our social groupings, but our position in each of these is enormously important to us. And here's the piece where the psychological safety comes in. Here's the piece where the chimp oh, the limbic system is paying so much attention to things like non-verbals, to things like what people say and what people do, and how we are perceived amongst our peers. Because the rule is quite simple. If everything is going well, if we are highly thought of, we're perceived of as well, we're well connected, the relationships are solid and smooth and reliable, there's no threat there. We know our place, and our place is secure, and that feels safe. Where there is a challenge, and especially in work, is where that safety and security is potentially under threat. Maybe someone in a meeting has just looked at us in such a way as implies to us they have judged us. They have perhaps judged us as something not great. They've implied our idea was bad, or they've implied that we haven't read the brief properly, or that we're not doing our job properly, or that their idea is better than ours. That is of concern to a limbic system because it might impact how we are thought of by the rest of the group. And if that goes badly, there is a risk that we might slide down the pecking order, down the hierarchy, or at worst, we might be rejected from the troop. We might be rejected from the group. And from a human's perspective, especially a human limbic system perspective, there isn't much that feels more threatening than the possibility that we might be removed from a social grouping without that being our choice. We might be rejected. We might be not good enough. We might be perceived as somehow inadequate. And if you want to take yourself to any moments where perhaps you felt like that, you will know how uncomfortable, how deeply unsettling, how very upsetting that can be, especially if it's happening in our here and our now, even more so if it's happening in our workspaces where we already don't have as much control as perhaps we might like, and we've got an awful lot riding on it because a lot of our resource is generated by our work. A lot of our status, if you like, how we see ourselves and how other people see us, is generated by our work. We can hold our heads high and say that, yes, we're a this or we're a that. We get pride from what we do because it tells other people how important we are. So any possible risk to that is a grave risk indeed. And how does the limbic system keep an eye out for this? Well, obviously, it pays attention to things that are being said, things that are being done, all sorts of clues that it gets from the environment around it. But crucially, and especially when we are talking about relationships with other people, it's paying attention to the non-verbals, what people are doing, what their bodies are saying. And here, it is lightning fast at recognizing the moment that someone else has perhaps formed a slightly less than positive opinion, the moment that someone else is muscling in and overriding them, ignoring what they're saying, the moment that they're not being heard or listened to anymore. And all of these things represent risk. Because if that's the case, where's it going to end? If that's the case, what does it mean about me? About where I fit? And yeah, you'll quite often hear people saying, I don't know where I stand. I hear myself saying it too sometimes. I don't know where I stand. And that makes us deeply uncomfortable. And the more uncomfortable we get, the more the risk starts to rise that maybe our security within this group isn't quite what we thought it was. And that's going to sound the biggest alarm bell of all. After all, from a chimp perspective, in the natural world, an individual that has been ousted from a group is unlikely to survive very long on its own. And that is the big fear that lurks under all these things, the biggest threat of all. Social exclusion, social isolation, or indeed rejection. And it's why the limbic system takes such a very keen interest in threats to its emotional security and safety, because they have a direct correlation with the potential risk to its physical security from its point of view through the lens of the world of the wild, wild west or the jungle. I hope that helps just a little and puts a little bit more understanding around why that would matter so much. Certainly as we move forward, it's something we're going to keep coming back to, but I just wanted to give you some more thoughts about why it matters so very much and why we are going to spend so much time thinking about it and talking about it in future sessions.